Mistakes in watercolor is very common, even among professional artists. This is due to the nature of watercolor paints that uses water as a medium, where it can bleed fast onto the paper and even dry quickly. So while I paint a sunset seascape, I will share with you some of the tips to nail a good painting as well as the common mistakes and how to correct them. For a wet on wet technique, always ensure that the paper is thoroughly wet with clean water, and make sure you use papers that are beyond 300 grams per square meter, because anything below that is considered too thin and has a high tendency to warps and tear. Always kickstart painting using a very much lighter paint color. Even if your painting is of a darker color shade, identify the lightest color on the palette to start your painting with. Do not use too many colors during the first layer of painting itself. Allow the first layer of painting to dry and then decide on the additional colors or even repainting the original paint colors. During wet on wet technique, if you think some part of your paper has dried, just re-wet them with a clean damp brush. Avoid using a soaked wet brush as it can start to create stains and marks onto your painting. And if there is excessive paint, just ensure you have a second brush handy so that you can lift out some of those pigments that have bled profusely. This is my second brush that I keep handy in order to lift out some of the excess paint as well as reshape some part of the cloud painting. And in order to do this, your brush should be damp and not soaked wet or completely dry. Always ensure your first layer of painting has completely dried before you attempt the second layer of paint. Otherwise, it could distort or damage the first layer of painting that you made. Even on the second layer painting, always have the minimalistic approach where you don't overdo with your amount of paint pigment. Keep observing during the painting process to detect any mistakes early and correct them fast. You don't want to get carried away with the painting process and only realizing the mistakes at a very late stage. After all the observations and you're comfortable with your current painting status, then you can add more pigments to enhance the look of the painting. At this point of time, you may want to focus on the light and dark areas as well as important shapes in your painting. So make a good observation and apply your brush strokes carefully based on the outcome you would like to see. You can always soften hard edges or hard lines by applying soft washes with a clean damp brush. When painting silhouette, do not use black as its first layer of paint. They seem darkest part of the painting, however they have a lighter tone as well. And this can be noticed on the edge or corners of the silhouette subject. Therefore, I would recommend you using a much lighter tone than black, as in sapphire, burnt umber, or even a dark grey shade. Once your silhouette painting has dried, then you can layer them with black to highlight the darkest part of the subject. Leave out empty spaces between your silhouette painting if you intend to put a peaking light, as in sunlight or sun rays. If the light areas or the shine in between your silhouette painting requires more shine, then lift out some pigment using a clean damp brush, or better still, a damp paper towel. Analyze and ensure you are satisfied with the main painting before you start making in the finer painting details. Now, a moment of truth. As I was finishing up the painting of this boat, I suddenly realized that this entire painting lacks some vibrance, as the sunset seemed to be a bit dull and faded. And this is why I mentioned earlier that you need to decide properly before you move on to the next stage, especially when it comes to painting finer details. Well, it happens to many of us sometimes, but mistake is a mistake, right? So thankfully, I quickly thought of the glazing method in watercolor, whereby once your painting has completely dried, you can glaze a layer of light paint over it. And as you witness the entire process right now, you can notice that immediately upon glazing, the entire painting has turned out to be very bright and brand new. It has created a new level of vibrancy that I intended to achieve. But bear in mind, in order for this glazing technique to be successful, you have to ensure that the entire painting should be completely dry before you glaze on them. And secondly, the paint mix should be slightly lighter and not a very thick consistency. Otherwise, you could end up overlapping the original painting too much. And if your painting lacks highlights or even shine, as in the shine area on the sea surface of this particular painting, you can quickly fix them by using white gouache. Though it may be an unfavorable approach to some artists, but I would say in my past experience, white gouache has been a savior to watercolor paintings. So no harm trying the gouache, because at the end of the day, watercolor and gouache are not completely different medium, as both uses water, and it's just that gouache paints are more of the opaque nature compared to watercolor paints. To paint finer lines or details, use a script brush as their bristles are very thin and long. And due to this nature of their bristle, they are quite flexible, where you can paint soft lines as in water ripples or even hair or fur on animals. Now, once I am satisfied making adjustments of the shine areas on the sea painting, I could comfortably say I can repaint the boat that I have painted earlier. But like I mentioned earlier in this video, I could have avoided this mistake by not painting the boat earlier and made more adjustments on the sea painting much more comfortably, and then finally painting this boat. Which is why it is always important to judge your painting earlier in the stage before you rush into painting the details, which could be saved for the later stage. Because adjustments in between painting stages are part and parcel of any painting process, especially watercolor paintings. Remember the tips that I mentioned earlier in this video about silhouette painting. Now that I'm satisfied with my painting, I am layering black paint onto the earlier silhouette that I painted with Sophia. The effect or result may not be that obvious on the video screen, but trust me, when you're done with your painting or as you make your painting, you will realize that the technique of painting with a much lighter color followed by a darker color, as in this case black, will achieve a better silhouette that adds to a more realistic look onto your painting. As for the palm tree leaves, which is overlapping the white gouache, which is the shine on the sea, may look washed out, but worry not, because in reality some parts of subject may look blurry or unclear under very strong light, especially sun rays. Under certain circumstances, if you think the white gouache highlights is too overwhelming, for example, the shine on the sea painting over here, you can add in other colored paints. I have added some yellow, Indian yellow, as well as some orange to tone down those white highlights. Have some fun with watercolor splatters. This is quite common to create extra character or effect on watercolor paintings. And with this, I end my tutorial here. I hope you enjoyed the tips that I have shared. So if you liked my work, then do like, share and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment sections below. Bye.